Well, you see, religion is a vehicle that carries the spiritual, and the vehicle is not needed once you arrive, of course, but it can be quite a long journey for many of us, and so we're in the vehicle a long time. We may even change vehicles, move into what we understand to be a more effective vehicle, more faster one, if you like, or safer even. We might switch religions, you see. We may do a journey that has a composite of several different types of vehicle. We may ride our bike to a friend and then walk around to the bus station, catch a bus and then catch a train, and perhaps an underground train and another surface train, and walk the rest of the way, and we arrive. Or it could be, we just go out the house, get into our car, and we drive quite a long time and arrive at the other end. Get out of the car. Fine, that's it. Now, the type of religion we choose has its effect on the rate at which we acquire spirituality, if you like. And in a sense, what spirituality we acquire is affected by it. And if we find that after a while we're going away that doesn't really suit us and there's a better option, we switch into that. So, trivially, you could say I started off as a pedestrian. My parents were basically, one was anti-religion and one was just pretty neutral towards it. And I was very rational, and I found rationality to be more effective than less rationality, shall we say. And I became, if you like, a logician, an academic, master of words, and a person who could play with ideas and so on. And that got me some distance. The earlier rationality got me to humanism and some consideration of communism, a valuing then of people, that in some sense people were to be the focus of what one was going to do in life. One was going to care for people. One didn't like to be in a world where there was poverty and suffering. And then I, under the influence of Mum, moved towards, at the same time, some grasp of yoga. I was doing exercises before I became a humanist. I was doing some yoga, asanas and so on and off. And I became entranced by Paramahansa's Yogananda's autobiography, and I didn't become a Hindu, but I absorbed much of his ideas in the book. It had a profound effect on me, both at the time in reading and long term. I met a work colleague Jean, who was a Baptist girl, a few years older than me, and became a Baptist, became Christian. Well, I didn't. I became a Baptist, but I think I was always a bit of a marginal Baptist in the sense that I felt one could do better than the understanding that the Baptist had of Christianity. And that was, of course, because I'd got the background by then of studying Paramahansa's autobiography. And I do mean studying it, I don't mean just reading the book. I mean living with it pretty closely on and off. And so I was combining, in a sense, the two approaches. Not sure as you can travel in two vehicles at the same time, but if it were possible, that's what I was doing. And you could say in both, and in a sense, only partially in both. And so it goes on. Now, some advantage in doing such, you're never entirely accepted by the religion you're with, because you're, well, if you like, a bit on the fence. You're still, I won't say damagingly critical, but critical of it. You're ready to accept the good, but not all of it, because some of it does not present to you as good and right and acceptable. So you might hide the fact that you don't accept all of the theology of a certain religion, but it's still there, the fact that you are resisting certain concepts and ideas because you see them to be not valid or not acceptable to you. Now, I think we all have this, even if we have just one religion. I think we are aware that there's bits of the religion we're not truly accepting. The theology is there, but we're not taking it on board. We've had some resistance, some inner objection or lack of enthusiasm for certain aspects of the religion. You know, it might be in Christianity you're exhorted to pray without ceasing and regularly, and prayer is in fact a very small part of your life, in fact. Or it might in Hinduism mean you should be meditating and you're not, you know, or you're not doing it very much. Same with, of course, Buddhism. It may be there are certain concepts and ideas you're just a bit cautious of accepting, and at times you almost experiment with accepting them, and at other times you drop it because it just does not seem to add up quite to you. For instance, you might be in a Pentecostal church, as I am at present, and you don't really accept the notion of trampling demons under your feet, and you're not quite sure, quite happy about accepting the idea that there are evil spirits at all. And if they are, well, it's perhaps not a good idea to treat them with violence, because you know, my view is they are entities that, in some sense, have needs and feelings, and one does not like to think of any thoughtful being suffering one wants to rescue. And if you practice not rescuing but destroying such, it seems to be a very bad habit. You know, not the ideal godliness and holiness and gentleness and goodness and loving your enemies that we might see Jesus' story as presenting. You may be cautious, as I am, as to whether the Bible is of much value historicity-wise, and not of complete, perfect value spiritually. You may feel that with any religion that you have, be it Buddhism or Hinduism or Islam or whatever. You may feel that you don't entirely accept something. Now, of course, Judaic religions are warring against evil, and they all suffer, as I see it, from this unfortunate cultivation of violence, therefore condemnation, judgment, blame, and they are what we call dualistic systems. There's good and bad, you know. Alternative is a sort of unity type conception of reality, which is like the Buddhist reaction to Hinduism, which is to say the dualism is a misconception, which is what we're striving to overcome. And when we do overcome it, we come to this unity of all is one. There's neither you nor me, and there's neither good nor evil, because they're in the concept of the self, and so on. Well, if we think of, I want to do the next stage. I want to envisage, well, in terms of duality, an ego that is perfected yet distinct. In other words, there's a oneness in the harmony, but it's made up of infinite variety of individuals. The difference between the immature and the mature is a question of degree of harmony. So the kids in the playground might be quite violent to each other, unaccepting, cliquey, destructive to each other and to different groups. They form into gangs and groups that war against each other, like the nations do, or like the gangs do in tough areas of our cities and so on. And like we might be doing in the workplace and in the club or the organisation, there are these factions and they war and press against each other. And with maturity, they don't. There is an incredible harmony between all the individuals, but they keep their individuality. In other words, I do not see it as a sin of self. The sin side is simply not a misunderstanding of self so much as a lack of harmony, true spirituality, an acceptance, a loving care between distinct members of a family that identify with each other and each contribute their own individuality in a harmonious way. I think it may be by them all having the same values, but it might not be. I think what we're learning in life is that we're coming to love and care for and understand the individuality of the values of the individuals, the differences. They have different values, but somehow they're harmonizing. They're into a oneness with each other. So, well, I mean, trivially, one might like, in particular, to be creative in bringing up children, whereas the partnership, might love being creative in looking after the house, the home, or a career that brings home the protection and the resources to the home. You know, the classic view of, as we understand it, of the family. She's the homemaker and, loving and care and provision. He is the family protector and provider, and makes the family possible in that way. Quite individual, different roles, spiritual roles, well, practical roles too, but I mean, obviously, but that in some sense those practical roles house or contain a spiritual role that is different and yet somehow harmoniously the same. In a sense, they have the same goal, the harmony and the ongoing creativity of the family. Lovely. Just that we're going to do it on a fantastic scale, an infinite scale. Now, therefore, well, at that level, there are people that are outside the family that are a violence to it, a cost to it, destructive potentially. And there's those that are in and those that are out, those that are family and those that are not. Well, that seems very unhappy. I don't want life to be excluded, or if you like, I want the families to be in harmony now. If you like, I want them to live in the ideal society, which is, I think, an aspect of civilization, isn't it? That we're not going to be tribally, family-wise, tribally warring with other families. We become one united nation. Then, because we find nations fighting against nations, so we're at a different level now, seeking international harmony. And perhaps it becomes one world nation in the end, and we shudder at that as Christians say, because we think, that means taking on values that are not our values. And there's the political correctness, which in some sense says, you should be able to keep your separate values, but in harmony. And this, I think, is bewildering to most of the religions that we are, that's not, but certainly to Judaic religions, that we can be in harmony with peoples that have different religions, different vehicles. You know, there's a war between the cyclist and the motorist, the pedestrian and the cyclist, and the pedestrian and the motorist. And you know that railways in some sense seem to have priority in that they don't stop. You don't stop, but then the train goes straight over you, you know, because it can't stop. And somehow we've got to find a society that blends all these forms of transport into something that's safe to live in and achieves overall the best happiness and goodness that can be achieved. And it's always early days. We're trying to blend things that might otherwise be inconsistent, individualities that rub up against each other, and the friction's not necessarily good. The friction can be good, of course, in that it in itself starts to, any form of contact, it might be violent to begin with, but any form of contact starts to let you understand and know something of the other side. Of course, you may react strongly against it because you feel it's harmful to you, basically, until you find a way of coalescing or living in harmony with it. Because even in Buddhism, we have the notion that when you finally get to enlightenment, you will drop the vehicle. You'll drop the Dharma, the teaching, because you've arrived. There's a state of being, maturity, adulthood in the kingdom of heaven that discards the religion. This, of course, is very very much resisted by people in the religions who are still on the path, not yet arrived. So we have Jesus as saying, love your enemies. That's not really a strong sentiment in the Old Testament, is it? To love your enemies. I mean, most of the time it's warring with them and asking God to help you slay your enemy and defeat him and overcome. Jesus is, I think much further down the line. And I think he's moved away from duality. I think any religion presses a conformity, a non-individuality, a unity of values, and to some extent a non-acceptance of life that has different values. It may, like Christianity, loosely accept such by saying, well, they'll be all right if we can convert them to our way of thinking, to our values. But until that happens, they're a heathen man and should be treated as such. Apparently, from the Jesus point of view, we still have to love our enemies, but not really in fellowship. Jesus was certainly is preaching and going out to the world, the crowds, but when he's praying, especially in John 17, it's for those that God has given it, those that thou hast given me, and those that believe on me through their word. Those are the ones I'm praying for, that they may be one as we are one. Whereas the Bodhisattva vow is much more emphasizing loving all, which is a sort of stage further, isn't it, than simply loving your enemies. Or perhaps it's the same thing, it's a oneness that embraces all life, if not all creation. And I think there is a stage further, that there is a view that embraces all matter as well. You know, I'm distressed when a tree has to be cut down, even pruned. It's minor, of course, because I'm insensitive, but I'm distressed when a building comes down or something is broken. I'd like it to be mended, really, brought back to fullness of being, and perhaps even greater fullness than it was, you know, upgraded in the repair. You know, we put the fence back up and we make it better, and we grow grapevines on it, perhaps. You know what I mean? It's lovelier than it was before. I don't know. Is there ultimately then only one set of values? Or we must all have the same values to be in perfect harmony? Or is it that it's even tighter, there's only one set of values, which tends to be the view of religion? I mean, they may have slightly different values, but they're pretty close to each other. It's as if the religions are trying to move towards, you know, their spirituality hints at one set of values. If you like, the values of God or the divinity or the perfection that they're trying to grasp and contemplate. I don't think so. I think for those that have a divinity, those that have a God, the God is ideally seen as coping with the different values that, for instance, the children have, but still loving them all, you know, a bit like Jesus loving your enemies, or the Heavenly Father loving both the Son in the prodigal son story, both the prodigal and the son that stays at home. He loves them both, the Father. They are different. They've had different values, or they have at any one time, but he's still extending a harmony towards them, embracing their difference. And I suppose then the ultimate is to say, well, the defining necessity for the enlightenment would be this ability to harmonize with differences. The PC sort of thing is, can we accept your individual cultures and religions into a society that nonetheless finds a harmony without destroying your culture and individuality? Or do we end up with simply a new, modified or amalgamated religion, society, culture, that leaves the others behind historically? And I don't know. What do you think? Thank you, Heavenly Father.